Hello lads and welcome to yet another video. Now, today I'm going to be talking about something which I like talking about, because what's the point if I didn't? What an odd opening. Now, I like villains, especially in Doctor Who, because I think villains are what make the story, or part of what makes the story anyway. It's the most interesting parts of what makes a narrative, the villains and the conflict that they bring. And there are many types of villains within Doctor Who especially. You don't just get the sort of stockpiled one, you can get a lot of branches and a lot of types of villains, especially concerning their motives. And it's the motives which I'm most interested in, because within Series 11 alone you've had different types of villains who've sort of stem in all sort of the three main branches what I've sort of deduced that Doctor Who villains typically root from. And I want to talk about these, and I want to talk about how the best sort of way to write types of villains are, and that's just it, especially within Series 11. I'm going to try and keep it in the contents of that, because, it's relevant, innit? So let's just crack on and do that. Now, it's not just Series 11 that these type of villains are sort of introduced. They've extended above and beyond the past 50 years of Doctor Who, but the three sort of main ones are the just plain evil, the primitive, and the misunderstood. They're the sort of three categories that you can sort of source almost every antagonist within Doctor Who that you can place in there. The sort of common basic one is the just plain evil categories. This is stuff like Tim Shaw and the Morax from the Witchfinders. This is the sort of stockpile one that Doctor Who sort of mainly follows, and they're always good fun. They're just evil for evil's sake, which is fine. Maybe it doesn't strictly mean that they're one-dimensional. They could have a culture and a history to them. They could have sort of rituals, as the Stenza did. They have a hunting ritual. The Morax had this sort of culture around them, and they were sort of added on to the fact that the tree was a prison and they're poison to the tree and stuff like that. Just because they're just plain evil doesn't mean they're strictly basic. Sometimes it isn't the fact that they just want to take over the world or the universe. Maybe they are doing that, but they've got just a couple of slices of layers just underneath them, not necessarily sort of giving reason to why they do what they do, but just so it gives them a little bit of backstory, so they're not just a moustache twirling person. There's not really much to say about this type of villain. They're always good fun to write, and the sort of difference that comes from the different individual ones is just sort of the types of villains there are. Like the Morax, they were muddy creatures who possessed people, while the Stenza had a ritual of taking parts of the victim and gluing it to their faces, which, that's the stuff that makes them interesting. Those little details about what the aliens are makes them interesting. And when they're written fine, because they're just sort of the basic ways to write those type of villains. So there's not much to say about those, so I'll just go straight on to the next one, which is the primitive type of aliens. Not even strictly aliens, sorry, but this is the type of villains like the spiders from Arachnids in the UK, and the Pating from the Tennettenberg conundrum. When we come across these villains, they don't really have a plan, they don't have a motive, they don't really have a sort of an antagonising relationship with the Doctor or companions or any of the supporting characters themselves. They're literally just out to survive and live. They're doing what they do out of natural instinct, and it's just sort of that basic sort of survival evolution sort of attacking phase. These villains can be done well if sparingly. I think a favourite villain that sort of sits in this category, just out of all the episodes that I've watched, are the Reapers in Father's Day, and even those, they're not just strictly primitive, they are acting on an instinct, but there is still a credible threat there. If anything, even the Reapers can be taken as the misunderstood ones, because they're actually trying to heal time through the paradoxes. In Father's Day, you could say that the catalyst of the events and the things that actually start the conflict is Rose saving her father, which thus bring the Reapers to fixed time, but they are acting off a evolutionary sort of reflex to heal it. They're not considerate of who's good or who's bad, they're just doing what they've been evolved to do, and that's fine, but they still come with a credible threat. They're still attacking people, and they're still antagonising one group, because it was Rose who brought them here, and Rose is the sort of the conflict of everything. They are the ones that they're attacking. They've got purpose to go towards them, which I think is how those ones should be written. Like, if you're having a primitive villain in your story. Make sure that they're not just attacking anyone, but they've got a reason to go with the central group, so we feel like there's a major stake at risk, and it makes us care for the characters, and it makes us want them to defeat the people. Because with the Pating and with the spiders, they were acting off a solely evolutionary thing, but they weren't really sort of active in going for the Doctor. It just they were attacking something and the Doctor happened to be there. They had no reason to single her out, and because of that it didn't really feel satisfactory when they were defeated. Like the Pating was blown out the airlock and the spiders were locked in the safety room, but that could have happened to anyone. It didn't necessarily have to be the Doctor that had to fix that. If you're going to write these sort of characters, then do it so they have a reason to go for the central group. But that's that over and done with. The third one, which is the most interesting one, and the reason why I wrote this video, I don't write these things, is the misunderstood villain. We've had a couple of misunderstood villains where they're actually had good intentions all along, or they're actually good guys, such as the Fajarians in Demons of the Punjab, or Charlie in Kablam. Now, Charlie is the absolute cherry on the cake. He's my absolute favourite antagonist from this series so far, and I'm going to explain why here. The misunderstood trope is also something that Doctor Who has sort of worked around in the past few years. I think the worst one, I enjoyed the episode, but the sort of worst way that this trope has been pulled off, it was in Knock Knock, when it turns out that, what's his name, David Suchet, the landlord, was actually killing people so he could protect his mother, the wooden lady. And, you know, that's fine, that's a decent concept, but I think where it actually messed up was that his reasoning didn't excuse his behaviour. The Thajarians also was a sort of weak, misunderstood villain, because they didn't really add anything to the threat of the episode. They were just sort of there, and you know, that's fine, but I do think they were sort of wasted. If you took them out of the episode, they wouldn't really contribute anything. Demons of the Punjab could have been an absolute pure historical, and it would have been just as good. Not that, and especially how good their design was for the Thajarians. They were sort of bleh. The Thajarians had a good backstory, though. Their planet was destroyed, so they renounced their evil ways to witness those who died alone. That's a nice little motive they've got themselves there. But I mean, it's fine. But they weren't a threat. There was no stakes connected to them. I think if you're going to do the misunderstood villains, it shouldn't be done like the Thajarians, where you thought they might be up to something, but it turns out they're not. The threat should be there is a threat there, but the character believes what they're doing is right, and their reasoning helps you empathise with them. That is what a good misunderstood villain should do, and it's exactly what Charlie did. He had good motivations. He wanted humans to be back in the workforce. He was moving for equality, if anything, but his methods were wrong. Even the Doctor tried to explain to him and tried to help him, but he just weren't having any of it. He got caught in the bubble wrap explosion. Bubble wrap explosion, that's not a sentence I thought I'd say. With the Thajarians and the wooden lady from Knock Knock, especially the wooden lady from Knock Knock, even the landlord, David Suchet, his reasoning didn't make you say, oh, that's why he's doing it. It was just sort of, yeah, but there's not really any reason to do that, mate. You're just a bit of a dickhead. Charlie was just an extremist activist whose reasonings would actually connect with us the most, because he was moving for more equality for humans, and since we are humans and not robots, we could connect with that. At least you could if you were immersed in the story. Obviously we can't connect with that because we don't have competition with robots. Or do we? That's the main thing. I don't think the misunderstood villain trope has been used to death, as some people say it is. I think even I said it was. But it's just the difference of how they're written. Do their reasonings make the audience empathise with them and understand their actions? Do their reasonings put the audience at a sort of moral dilemma of who to side on? If the audience was in the same position as the villain, would they do the same thing? I think that's the basic underline of what makes a good misunderstood villain. Because they are misunderstood. Sort of, really, maybe. What do you think? Looking forward to the finale, or is it a two-parter? Probably not. Looking forward to the 2 last episodes of the series. I'm going to leave now. Let's just